Welcome back to Grumpy Vet Garage. Today we're going to install a dash cam on my 2021 Toyota Supra. When shopping for dash cams, there's a lot of things that you need to consider. Resolution, how many channels you want, how you're going to power that camera. And while what I'm going to show you is going to be installed on my Supra, a lot of this is general information that can be used to install a dash cam on any vehicle that you may have. So moving on to what I got, I ended up getting a Viofo A139 Pro, a 2-channel. So that's a forward-facing camera and a rear-facing camera. I thought that suited well for my application, but for your application, a single channel or maybe a third channel, which would be an interior camera, might help you with what you're trying to do. Additionally, for my application, I ended up getting a Hardwire kit from Viofo. I'm going to run this straight off the car battery. From the research I did, I believe this is going to be a good option for me, but if it isn't in the future, I can always change to a backup battery. So let's go ahead and move over to the bench, and I'll show you what's in the boxes. Laid out on the table are the contents of the Viofo A139 Pro box. So the main thing is the main camera, and this camera has a resolution of 4K. Also, it utilizes, and I'm not a technical expert on this, it uses the Sony Starvis 2 sensor, and from what I understand, that allows for this camera to pick up low light conditions better. So this is a really good camera. The rear camera, again, it sticks using 3M. The rear camera is 1080p, which is still really good resolution, but 4K front and then 1080p rear. There's a filter, a polarized filter for the lens. This helps with glare that may be getting picked up by the camera. There is a trim tool, user manual. This is the cord that connects the front camera, which is the brains of the operation, to the rear camera. There's also anti-static, or I believe it's anti-static. Basically, it's static mounts for the camera. You use these to adhere this to the windshield, but it allows you to remove it easily without having to use heat or something to release the 3M. So I'm excited about using these to attach the camera to the glass. Also comes with a standard USB. I believe it's a USB-C to a regular USB. We probably got a million of these sitting around your house. Additional 3M sticky backs for if you needed to redo a mount. And then it also comes with a 2-port or 2 USB cigarette lighter adapter and a cord that goes to USB to power the camera if you wanted to run the camera off of the cigarette lighter. This isn't the way we're going to do it, but it comes with what you need in the packaging to power the camera. What it does not come with, and I want to highlight, is it does not come with a memory card. So the memory card that is in here is actually a Samsung 512 gigabyte memory card. This is probably bigger than I need. Let me know in the description whether or not this is a ridiculously large one. But I had to format it per the instructions, what they call FAT32 formatting, and I pre-installed it. But you need to remember, when you're buying this camera, it's not going to come with a memory card. You're going to have to purchase one. So here are the contents of the Hardwire kit from Viofo. It comes with a user manual and then the actual Hardwire harness. The Hardwire harness has a USB connection to connect to the camera, and then 3 wire connections that you need to make, one being ground, the red being power, and the yellow being accessory. With it having the 3 wire connection, the car has the ability to know when the car is turned on and when it's turned off. Another feature of this harness is that you can select when this unit will actually stop pulling power from the battery. So this won't run indefinitely. What it does is it gets to a cutoff point and shuts off. So currently I have it all the way over and set to cut off at 12.4 volts. You can run it to where it'll run the battery down to as low as 11.8 volts, but I thought that would be too low, and I'm going to start off with just going to 12.4. I think that's a good balance for the car. So how I'm going to get power to this, the actual harness has a nice spade for the ground wire, but for the accessory and power, I'm going to use these fuse taps. So these fuse taps may be a little bit different than some of the other ones. I know that some will not allow you to pull power to an accessory wire if the slot you're using in your fuse box doesn't have a fuse in it currently. Now, if you're pulling a fuse and transferring over to this first spot, it doesn't really matter what fuse tap you use, but in our case, we're actually going to be pulling accessory power from a spot in the fuse box on the Supra that doesn't currently have a fuse in it. So I verified that these will do that, and I'll leave a link in the description of where you can get these particular fuse taps so that you can power the camera in a Supra or any other vehicle where you're going to pull from a fuse block spot that doesn't have a fuse in it. Your first step to installing the cameras is actually to download the app. You're either going to go to the App Store on Apple or the Google Play Store on Android, download the app so that you can access the camera. The app allows you to connect to your camera via Wi-Fi so that you can view what you've recorded, manage all your videos, also change settings to the camera on how it's going to record, power conservation, all that stuff is built into the actual app. But first step for installing the cameras is actually to get the app, because we need to see what view we get out of our camera so we know where to mount the forward-facing camera. At the beginning of the video, I said we weren't going to use the cigarette lighter and this cable to power the camera. We're going to use the Hardwire kit from Viofo. And that is true, but to locate where we're going to put the forward-facing camera on the windshield, we want to power it quickly. So we're going to use the cigarette lighter and cord that's supplied so that we can power our camera. And then while using the app, we can verify the view we're getting out of the camera so we can finalize where we're going to place the forward-facing camera. The reason you want to do this is the forward-facing camera, again, it's the hub of the system and everything builds off of that. So once we find out where this is going, then we can start running our wires away from this main unit to the rest of the system, you know, power cables with the Hardwire kit, and then also the cable to the rear of the vehicle to connect to the rear-facing camera. Before moving into the car, I wanted to show one more feature of the Viofo camera. So when you would mount it onto the actual windshield in this orientation going forward, the actual mount here, you can slide off the camera from the mount. So that's something to consider when thinking where you're going to put it on your windshield. Are you going to want to put it on the driver's side of the rearview mirror and then it potentially strike the rearview mirror while we're moving it, or put it onto the passenger side? Let's move into the car and I'll show you what I've decided, but I think the passenger side is the better side of the rearview mirror to put it, and I'll show you why. So in the car, sitting on the passenger side of the Supra, the location that I think is most appropriate for the camera is right here, tucked up next to the rearview mirror. And I've checked that view again using the app to verify what the view looks like. But if you put it onto the driver's side, it actually gets into some of the view of the driver. The windshield of a Supra is relatively small, but for any vehicle, you really don't want to put anything additionally that's obstructing the view out the front of the car for the driver. It being on the passenger side like this is not going to affect operation of how this camera is going to work. It's still going to have a very good view out the front of the vehicle. And that's what's important. Not take away from the safety of you driving, but also getting a good view. With the location decided on where we're going to put the camera on the windshield, now we need to come back and clean the windshield so that our 3M is going to be able to adhere to the windshield. I know at the beginning of the video, I was thinking of using those static cling mounts, but considering that the camera will slide off the mount, I think it's a good option to go ahead and adhere it with the 3M. Removing that material back off can be difficult, but once I place it here, I don't envision anytime soon that I'm going to be removing that mount from the windshield, so I'm okay with a relatively permanent style mount. But how I'm going to clean the windshield is with alcohol. This is just basic alcohol in a spray bottle and a microfiber cloth. Previously, I've talked about you don't want to turn around and spray alcohol wildly inside your vehicle or anywhere on the vehicle. You want to put it onto the cloth first and then wipe the area you're going. You want to control where the spray goes because alcohol can damage surfaces like your dash, your screens, that kind of stuff if you're too aggressive with it. So the windshield's cleaned, and I went ahead and mounted the camera to the windshield, and you can see that just going to the passenger side, it'll slide off, and then it'll slide back on. So that's where it's going to be mounted. And I ran the power cable for the Hardwire kit up to the headliner, and then using the supplied trim tool, go ahead and tuck the wires going across the top of the headliner all the way over to this point. Now, because we have a curtain airbag here, we have to take special care because we're going to run this wire over and across here, but we need to pull this cover off. And you don't really want to play when it comes to airbags. So I am going to go ahead and disconnect the battery before moving forward with removing this cover. So in the trunk, I went ahead and removed my WeatherTech floor liner and pulled up the bottom of the trunk floor to expose the battery. Now, before moving to disconnect the battery, you're going to want to tie something, and I just used a microfiber cloth, through the actual locking mechanism of the trunk, because you don't want to accidentally close the trunk while the battery is disconnected, because if so, you're going to end up climbing through the back of your car in a tight space to grab the emergency release to release the trunk. And I'm on the big side, and I'm pretty sure you don't want to do that anyway. So what we're going to need to do to disconnect the battery is just disconnect the negative battery terminal. I'm going to go ahead and get, I believe that's a 10 millimeter, get a 10 millimeter and disconnect this and pull this to the side. So it was a 10 millimeter. You just want to loosen that up and pull the negative away from the terminal of the battery. I know it's crude, but I used some green duct tape and ran it around the negative terminal just to isolate it. You don't want it to accidentally somehow this come up and come in contact with the negative terminal and reconnect the battery, because again, we're working with an airbag and we don't want to play. Coming back into the car, you're going to pry up on this little plastic clip here that says airbag, and then once that's lifted up, you can pull it away. And then underneath that, let me see if I can get a good picture of that. It is a T25 screw. So we need to just back that screw out. And then there's going to be two clips. You're going to pop that, and then it should slide up and out. Okay, so panels removed. Use the T25 to get the screw that's up here. There ended up only being one clip, so the manual I have that says there's two is incorrect, but then there's two other tabs at the bottom. So once this screw is removed, this clip is popped, this will come back and you can slide it up and out. So I didn't really mention why we're going to the passenger side, so I want to get that out of the way now. There is a fuse box in the kick well, or the floor area on the passenger side, and that's where we're going to pull our battery and accessory power from. So going to the passenger side, down the A-pillar, and now we have to move to removing the side trim panel on the dash. So next panel is this side trim panel. It just pops off once you have this piece off. And on the back, you can see it is 4 clips that just need to be popped out. And now we have access to run wires down the A-pillar and then down to the footwell. Now the floor kick panel, it gets released by, let me turn it around, 1 and 2, like quarter turn. And this comes free, and then it'll come down, and then you can pull it forward. It's held in place by a clip on this side, And then you can see right here and here, there are two tabs that hold it in the front to keep it from falling down. So let me pan back so you can see it. So it's just 1, 2, and it'll come down and then back out like this. Okay. So a little difficult to record, but we removed all those panels so that we could get access down to this fuse block right here. Utilizing the fuse taps, this is going to be our power, and over there is our accessory. I'm going to put in a diagram here that shows this actual fuse block and the numbers of each individual fuse, so you can kind of follow along. But to get accessory power, which is the one further back, we got that from fuse 57. And then for battery power, it's the one closer to the camera. We got that from fuse 27. So now we need to go ahead and make our electrical connection, run our wires down from the top, and then test our system and make sure that we have power to the camera. Okay, so the wiring's ran, and I don't know if you can see it. Right there, I have it bundled up. And then I have the control box. Again, very difficult to see right there. And I use 3M dual lock to adhere it to this brace from the dash so it wouldn't rattle around. Again, you don't need to do that. You can bundle it up and lay it in there if you like. And then as far as the connections, I trimmed back the connections because these wires were too long in the kit. And I use solder splices, which are these, to attach this and then put some heat shrink over it. And then as far as the ground, I shortened it. It's right, it's hard to see, right there. I connected it to that aluminum stay. I verified that that was a ground and it worked good. But I put a new ring clamp on it and then used this style of pliers to crimp them on. Again, you don't need to use the heat shrink or the solder connectors or those ring terminals. You could use just as it comes in, but it just was too much wiring, so I cut it back and then did this to make it more of a clean install. But right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in these connectors, and then I'm going to see if we have power to our camera. So camera is functioning. I checked through the app that it was recording, and everything is working good. So now I'm going to move on to connecting the rear camera. Tidying up the wiring coming from the power cable going down to the fuse block. There is actually an existing harness right here that runs down above the shield for the side curtain airbag. You can zip tie our harness to the existing harness, and that way can keep it away from it rubbing on any of these metal surfaces and just keep it out of the way looking nice and tidy. So I put about 5 zip ties on there, and I'm going to clip them all back right now. So the side cover panel for the side curtain airbag is back on, and I started running the connector to the rear camera. You could see on the back of the Viofo, I'm trying to get it to zoom in there. It says rear, so you plug that camera into the rear input and then run it up next to the cable that went across. And then before putting this on, pull this back and then run it down the headliner. So you can just tuck it the whole way, and you can see right here it's still hanging down. I have to continue to tuck it around the headliner to work it towards the open hatch. Okay, so the headliner or the cord is ran underneath the headliner all the way back behind the seat. The 2 sail panels, the ones behind this window, try not to shake the camera too much. This one and this one have to come off. They're right here, and each one of them have 4 clips that hold them in. So use your trim tool and pull those out. But once those are out, the headliner is actually bolted in the back. Right here is a bracket, and that bracket bolts here, holding the headliner up. You have to undo it here and there on the other side. And then in the middle, there are two clips. You can see the white here and there. There are two clips that need to be popped down, and the headliner will come down. That way you can move the cord across. I chose, even though I was coming up the passenger side, to go ahead and cross over to try to use up some of this extra length and go through this side. By the way, I pulled this panel off too. This is eventually where the camera is going to go and wires are going to come through. But here with the headliner, when you pull it down, it's going to be hard to show you. You need to feel over here, and you'll feel where the harness is coming through this boot. This boot right here. I've already put the boot back in, but there is a harness that comes through this boot around. You can see where this one's disconnected. You need to lay the harness up against that. The wiring harness for the rear camera needs to lay up against that harness to come through this boot. What I did was I greased up the end of the harness with some CB2 Redline. Again, you don't have to use that. You probably could use WD-40 if you wanted to, something to lubricate it. And I started pushing it through this hose. You also have to pull down this little clip that holds this up here. You have to push the harness through this corrugated rubber hose. It is not fun. It's going to take some time. You can do it. It'll come through, but keep pushing it and kind of stretching this and trying to straighten it out to allow it to come straight through, and eventually it'll come through. So you see these two holes right here. One's a plastic cover and the other one is like a rubber cover. I'll show on the other side. Plastic and then rubber. You're gonna need to pull both of those out. So you're gonna feed through this hole to get the harness here. And then once you get the harness here, you need to pull it through and then get the harness here. And then once you get there, then you can force it over the top of the plastic and out here. There's no easy way that I was able to figure out to do it. I had to slowly, trial and error, push its way over there. It's going to take some time, but that's where I'm at now. So what my plan is I'm going to coil up this extra underneath the headliner and then try to leave enough that I'm able to come and put my camera right here. But yeah, there's no real good way to do this. You have to disconnect everything, pull down the headliner, disconnect that, feed the wire through it, fiddle to get it up here somehow, however you want to do it. I use my fingers and a little hook tool, and then finally push it over here. So here's the rear camera installed. I went ahead and attached it to this piece like I was saying before, and there's a little bit of movement right here where it's lifted up because of the cable, but everything has gone back together like it was before and no issue. So I got the trunk back together. But yeah, this is where it's at, and then you're going to want to verify using the app that the angle of the camera is appropriate for your recording. So the Viofo A139 Pro 2-channel is installed on my 2021 Supra. Before going too much further, I want to go ahead and put in some footage of some daytime driving and some nighttime driving for you to see.
About Sotyktu today and learn more at SoClearlyYou.com. That's SoClearlyYou.com. So TIC2 deucravacitinib is a prescription treatment for adults with moderate to severe plaque psoriasis who may benefit from systemic therapy or phototherapy. Don't take if you're allergic. So TIC2 is the only once daily pill of its kind for adults with moderate to severe plaque psoriasis. Ask your dermatologist about SoTIC2 today and learn more at SoClearlyYou.com. That's SoClearlyYou.com. SoTIC2 deucravacitinib is a prescription treatment for adults with moderate to
Okay, so that footage was using the optimized settings from Viofo. They recommend 30 frame rates per second to get the most detail with their video. So that's what that's set to, 30 frame rates per second. But I've had the camera on the car for about a week, and so far I've had no problems. Video appears to be fine. No hiccups with it at all. It's easy to download videos off of the camera. So short term, it's been very good. I kind of want to hold off judgment on the camera for more time. I don't want to say this is the best camera for your car when I've only had it for a short period of time. So I plan on doing maybe like a 6-month review of the camera. So be looking out for that. But I feel as though it's a good camera. It's something that I think dash cams in general are something that you probably need, not just in a Supra, but really any vehicle, whether a minivan, a sedan, a truck. I kind of feel like having a dash cam is kind of like car insurance. When you're paying for it, you're like, do I really need this? But when you need it, you're glad you have it. So I think a dash cam, you're probably not going to notice it on the daily that you have one. But when something happens, I think you're going to be happy. I know I would be to have the dash cam. So I hope you've enjoyed this install. I tried to give as much detail as possible. I know sometimes it's hard to get in some of the tiny things as far as install. So if you have any questions, by all means, leave them in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. But if you like this kind of content, please consider subscribing to my channel. It really helps out the channel. Like this video, share it with your friends. Also, we have a Grumpy Vet Garage merch store. This is a Grumpy Vet Garage shirt, super specific. But we have shirts, hoodies, zip-ups, and pullovers in the store. The link to that store is in the description as well, and it really helps us out. But thanks for coming and seeing me in my garage. Until next time, have a good one.